It is 7 a.m. in Toronto, but this crowd is already wide awake, well-dressed, and pouring in. For many, it's the opportunity of a lifetime to be near the world's most famous feminist, Gloria Steinem.
She's an icon, in a word, and for women of any age, she's an inspiration. For old ones like us, she really was the one who paved the way for women.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend and my shero and yours, Gloria Steinem.
Shero, as in she-hero, icon. It's a word often used to describe her.
I understand I'm the first non-Canadian that you have invited, so I should just tell you I am a secret Canadian. I have often come here under stress from the U.S. to ask for asylum. The myths about this issue are false.
Rewind some 35 years when Steinem gave the feminist movement its high profile. The issues were equal rights for women and reproductive freedom.
Furthermore, approximately 1 out of 4 adult women in this country has had an abortion.
She was young, bright, and beautiful, and became the face of the fight. At 77, Steinem is still very attractive and still eager to share her views on politics, marriage, sex, and her own reluctant fame.
You were perceived as an icon, and I know that's not a word you like to hear in terms of describing yourself. So how would you describe yourself?
That's hard, actually. Well, as somebody who's just trying to leave things a little better than they were when I got here and having a very good time doing it. I mean, I feel so lucky to be able to work all the time at something I really care about. I think that's a huge, huge privilege.
And for the nearly 1,000 women, it is a huge privilege to be in this room. They've each paid hundreds of dollars to hear Steinem speak at this fundraiser for the Canadian Women's Foundation. The money goes to women living in poverty.
We are all fighting for reproductive freedom.
And to hear what she has to say about the fight that isn't over.
And a principle, a new human rights principle, that says that the power of the state stops at our skins.
Women's issues are still front and center now, but imagine what it was like when Steinem came of age in the 1960s. It was an era when women were restricted from access to universities and discriminated against in the workforce. It was expected that a woman's place was in the home.
Is my bacon ready yet? 20 past 8. Some more toast, team.
Will we win?
Steinem and other feminists fought for many of the rights women today take for granted.
I've said that there were only 2 ways for women to get into Washington: marrying in and marching in.
Steinem was the story, but among the storytellers, it was men mostly.
I remember the first time I was asked to anchor the national news in Canada. It was 1978. A new problem has cropped up at the disabled nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania. Throughout the entire building, people were saying, a woman's going to anchor the national news, a woman. As if, things have changed. Dramatically, things have changed. If we talk about this in broad strokes, is there still a need for the feminist movement?
Oh, is there still a need for oxygen? Is there still a need for self-respect? Is there still a need for democracy? Of course. Women own, 1% of the property and in the world, and we do something like 70% of the work, paid and unpaid, and get only 10% of the monetary reward.
And for all she's done to bring these issues to public attention, why isn't she a household name for younger women?
Do you know who Gloria Steinem is?
I don't know who Gloria Steinbeck is.
No, I don't. The name sounds really familiar. Wasn't she like an actress or something?
Do you think that young women, younger women, do you think they know who you are?
I don't care if they know who I am. I just want them to know who they are. That's the whole point.
And how do they feel about the F word, feminism?
And would I call myself a feminist? I guess I should. I feel like I should, but I wouldn't.
I think society views feminism in a negative way as like butch people that hate men.
Steinem thinks their reluctance to call themselves feminists may just be a stage they'll outgrow.
First of all, you have to experience what's wrong to get mad. And they haven't been in the paid labor force that long, usually, or maybe they haven't had children yet and discovered who cares for them and who doesn't. And for the moment, women tend to be conservative when they're young and get more activist as they get older. Men tend to be rebellious when they're young and get more conservative as they get older.
Some people have asked, are we a woman's party? Are we a third or fourth or fifth party?
Always the activist, Steinem also drew attention because of her looks. She was groovy.
Someone's described you as, a chick with a good sense of the vibrations.
Check out this 1968 interview with Moses Znaimer.
I just want to get past one uncomfortable and fairly obvious fact, and that's that's the fact that you're a pretty stunning woman. I want to know whether you capitalize on that.
Well, that's an interesting point. In the short term, I think probably yes, because it really is like being a Negro. I mean, people remember you. They say, oh, that writer who's a girl.
So much was made of the fact that you were so beautiful when the movement began. Did that help you?
People thought feminists must be ugly, they couldn't get men, that's why they were feminists. So in contrast to their picture of a feminist, I suddenly was beautiful.
But did it also work against you?
Sometimes it was not helpful in being taken seriously. And it was kind of painful to work really, really, really hard and then have it all attributed to looks and not to work.
Her work as an activist and journalist made her well known. Steinem is the founder of Ms. Magazine, the world's first feminist publication. But it was one of her most famous journalistic coups that made her infamous. In the 1960s, she went undercover as a Playboy bunny, infiltrating Hugh Hefner's Playboy Club.
I always thought that you had to be stacked, absolutely stacked to be a bunny girl. How did you get the job?
Well, you don't have to be stacked to be a bunny. In fact, all of that you see is usually stuffed with gym socks or plastic dry cleaning bags or nylon stockings or cotton or something. It's where the girls keep their tips. It's where it's just sort of traveling cash depository, that's all.
Compared to what's on TV these days, Hefner's Playboy Club seems quite tame. We show Steinem some of the latest and raunchiest we could find.
I'm done being the trophy wife. Freedom only makes me hotter.
Well, no, this is part of the backlash. As if homemakers are selfish, ridiculous, overly pampered, that's part of the backlash, to depict women this way.
Watching that, it doesn't make you angry?
Yes, of course it makes me angry. It's ridiculous. I mean, I think actually that is, among the worst.
And the sexualization of women? It's still, that woman said,
yeah.
I'm the trophy wife.
Well, to be fair, if the reward system were reversed, men would be doing it too. That is, say, take the Miss America contest, for instance. It's still the biggest source of scholarship money for women. If that were the biggest source of scholarship money for guys, guys would be doing it too.
Won't you join me?
Television aside, Steinem's favorite film ever, Breakfast at Tiffany's. She identified with the character Holly Golightly.
Please, darling, don't sit there looking at me like that.
Holly, I'm in love with you.
I love when you talk about the George Peppard character in Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn and how he turns to her and he says,
I love you. You belong to me.
And she says,
people don't belong to people.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That crystallized for you at the moment the importance of being part of the women's movement. Does it still resonate with you today?
Yes, it does, because she was rebelling. She was insisting on being her own self. And this movie was the first Hollywood movie in which women were allowed to be sexual, self-willed, and not be punished.
And Steinem didn't want to belong to anyone until the age of 66. That's when she married for the first time, tying the knot with Australian national David Bale.
How do you look back on marriage, having been the quintessential single woman for so many years in the 60s and 70s and 80s?
I didn't change, marriage changed. We spent 30 years changing the marriage laws. So you no longer had to give up your name, your credit rating, your legal domicile. I mean, I could not possibly have signed a marriage license otherwise. But there was no reason to get legally married at our advanced ages, except that he needed a visa.
So it was as simple as that?
Yeah.
You seemed happy, you seemed very much in love.
No, we loved each other, we wanted to be together, but the idea that there's only one love in your life is very unrealistic. Margaret Mead always said that marriage worked better in the 19th century because people only lived to be 40 or 50.
You didn't have a chance to get tired of each other.
Well, it's not tired of each other. It's wonderful, it's intense, it changes you forever. You're never going to be the same person you were if you hadn't loved that person.
3 years after their marriage, David Bale died of brain cancer. Steinem now lives alone.
So you can be on your own and not be lonely.
Well, nobody can be on their own and not be lonely because we're communal people. So I need my friends, I need my old lovers, I need my colleagues that I work with, we need each other.
Then we must also learn to say yes to each other.
Gloria Steinem, world-renowned feminist and activist, at age 77. What does she think about how far we've come?
Let me try to focus in on what the issues were in the 60s and 70s compared to what they are today. Has that changed? Are we still fighting the same battles?
They progress. They don't totally change. For instance, we were maybe in the beginning fighting against the idea that women were at fault if they weren't virgins when they married. But the overall idea of reproductive freedom and freedom of sexual expression is still the umbrella, but we're progressing underneath that umbrella.
On the street, most women tell us we've come a long way, baby. It's other countries that need to embrace feminism.
I do think there are certain areas in the world where, women are oppressed and they definitely need feminism.
Women's rights is still a huge struggle in countries outside of North America, like third world countries and places like that where women don't have the same opportunities as men.
Islam countries who still have the border between women showing what they can't show, like just their eyes.
Things may be better, but there is still a long way to go. Take, for example, the perceived symbol of female oppression, the burqa. There's a debate about banning it in North America.
France has banned outright the wearing of the burqa. It came up as an issue in Quebec. What do you think of that?
I don't think it's helpful to, first of all, if you ban something, you make it more attractive, wearing a burqa may be the only way that a woman is allowed out of the house at all. It may be the only way she can get an education. She has to be allowed to decide that.
But in terms of issues, the prostitution of women, domestic violence, all of those issues were around 30 years ago. They're still around today. What's it going to take to make even the baby step forward in terms of progress? Is it a change in attitude as far as men are concerned? Does it all start with men?
It's not men's fault that they get born into this structure that tells them that they're supposed to be dominant in order to be masculine. They didn't invent it, but they got born into it, and they may get addicted to it or hooked on it. It's almost like a drug. We deeply train people to believe that there's only two choices, to be the victim or the victimizer, so you have to be one or the other. If we take that away, we do have some pretty amazing, just natural instincts.
Natural instincts? Well, it raises the question, are men just acting out their biology? Take, for example, two famous sex scandals, former U.S. President Bill Clinton and the intern.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And more recently, accusations against Dominique Strauss-Kahn, former head of the International Monetary Fund.
Not going to be president of France.
Don't think so?
No.
He survived this.
Not really. No, what was great about this, it was a real object lesson, I thought, because first of all, a woman working as a maid in a hotel knew she had rights not to be sexually harassed and assaulted and came forward. And because she told the truth, women in France, the three women came forward and said they also had been harassed by him.
And his wife, stand by your man in spite of all of this. Hillary Clinton, stand by your man.
very different, though, you know, because no one had ever said, as far as I know, that Bill Clinton forced himself on anybody. Sexual expression is only a problem if it's if it's harassment or if it's force or if it's assault. Otherwise, it's up to them. You know, I don't really know the Clintons, but I've been in the same public rooms with them. They have one of the best marriages I've ever seen. They're the most interested in each other. They support each other. They ask each other's opinion. You know, so after that, it's not our business. Strauss-Kahn is a different kind of problem because he clearly did, according to the testimony of women, force himself. It wasn't free will at all.
How men view women, how women view women. And now, part of today's feminism involves taking back language meant to insult women.
You once said that a woman who aspires to do something is called a bitch. That was back in 1971. So is that still the case today?
No, I don't think so. I think it's much more normalized now, and women are free to aspire and use their talents much more. And partly because we took that word and changed it. For instance, when I went back to my home in Toledo a few years ago, I was on a local show. A man called up and called me a bitch, no, a slut. A slut from East Toledo. I thought, you know, that's pretty good. I'm putting it on my tombstone. Here lies a slut from East Toledo.
That's another word that feminists are reclaiming. Steinem is in Toronto, ground zero for Slut Walk, an international movement that started here.
And it started because a police constable said, if women don't dress provocatively, they're not going to get harassed.
Yeah, he gave them the word slut, and they took it and did exactly what I did too. And it's become an international movement. I mean, it's all over the States, it's in England, it's in other countries. And it has a wonderful vitality and sense of rebellion and reclaiming the right to be sexual, the right to wear anything we please and be safe.
And we have a surprise for Steinem. These are the founders of Slut Walk. They couldn't afford to get into that pricey breakfast, so we're bringing Gloria to them. We didn't think she should leave Toronto without meeting the women who started this movement.
We are Slut Walk Toronto, well, most of it.
While a lot of young women don't recognize Steinem, this group knows their feminist history.
We want to thank you for just making time for us and talking to us. It's really important. So thank you.
Absolutely, for playing such a strong part in working for a lot of the rights and freedoms that we enjoy today.
It's fun.
It is fun. It is fun.
This is the secret. It's fun. It's not always fun, but it's mostly fun.
And just remember that Steinem was the same age as these young activists when she first came out as a feminist.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Free and old.
As you look back on the things that you've accomplished over the years, is there anything you would change?
Oh, how long do we have? Yes.
Can we change tapes if you have a lot to say?
Time. Time is all there is, all we have on this earth, and I have wasted time by continuing to do what I already knew how to do instead of doing what was scary or responding to requests, because as a well-socialized female human being, I feel I have to be useful, instead of saying, well, someone else can do that, I should do what I can uniquely do.
Words to live by from a reluctant icon.